Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. To celebrate my channel passing the 200 subscribers mark, I've dug one out of the vault. 1990's Vecna Lives for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition by TSR. Okay, first a bit of history. Vecna Lives was released in 1990 and is a 96-page adventure for 6 to 8 characters levels 12 to 15 and is part of the WGA series of adventures for the world of Greyhawk. It features an excellent atmospheric cover by industry legend Jeff Easley depicting the famous hand and eye of Vecna, as well as the standing stones of Tovag Baragoo in the background. There will be spoilers from this point on, so stop reading now if you intend to play this. Okay, to the inside. The first thing we are greeted with is an introduction that gives an overview of how the DM should run the adventure. It advises that the DM should also have the World of Greyhawk campaign set, the City of Greyhawk box set, and the Greyhawk Monstrous Compendium, as well as the Manual of the Planes if they can. Also, the DM should familiarise themselves with the WGA 1-3 series of adventures, The Falcon's Revenge, Falcon Master and Flames of the Falcon, as they provide additional background information. The game is intended for a balanced mixture of races and classes. We are told that in short, this campaign is designed to kill characters, and if your style is to give your characters a break, then you need to adopt a more steely resolve, and you should carefully consider whether you want to allow your players to use their favourite characters in this scenario. We're given instruction on how Vecna Lives is reminiscent of a horror movie, and that surprise and suspense are paramount in attaining the right atmosphere. We have discussion on mood and foreshadowing and making your players sweat. This is followed by the story of Vecna. Vecna is a figure shrouded in the mists of history, from a time before the war between the Sul and Bacloonish empires, more a figure of legend than fact. In this time, Vecna was considered to be the mightiest of all wizards, completely unsurpassed by his peers who ruled over a long-forgotten nation. At least, that is one theory. Another theory holds that his tower rose from the depths of the Near-Deeve, and another that his power stretched across the plains themselves. In life, Vecna was known for his cruel nature. He is said to have bred entire villages simply to supply his laboratories, and to have annihilated entire cities under tidal waves of rock. Some also claim that Vecna was responsible for the Bright Desert. As he grew old and near death, he grew determined to live on in one way or another, and what happened next is not known for sure. Some say he amassed enough power to cheat death, others say that the gods cursed him to forever dwell on the border of life and death. Beyond death, Vecna became the greatest of liches. His name was whispered lest it invoke his wrath. Lord Vecna, the Whispered One, the Master of the Spider Throne, the Undying King, the Lord of the Rotted Tower. During this time, Kaz the Bloody-Handed rose to power as one of his lieutenants. As Vecna's body weakened, Kaz increasingly became his instrument of rule. As time passed, Vecna took less interest in the daily running of his kingdom. As a sign of Vecna's authority, he forged a mighty weapon like none seen before, the Sword of Kaz. Such was the power of the weapon that nobody could stand against Kaz when he wielded it. As it was forged by Vecna's hand, the weapon was evil, and it whispered corrupting thoughts to Kaz, feeding his pride and vanity. Over time, Kaz became corrupted and finally one day struck out of Vecna. Though no man ever saw the battle that ensued, all that was said to remain in the destroyed ruin of Vecna's tower was his lifeless hand and eye. Kaz and the rest of Vecna were nowhere to be seen. In the time since, the 3 artefacts have surfaced and vanished from time to time, each time bringing great power and woe to all that wield them. Unfortunately, that is not all that remains of Vecna. His will was too powerful to be destroyed, even though his body perished. His essence wandered o'er earth, drawn to those that revered and worshipped him. Over time, a cult has grown around Vecna, and at last he was accepted as a demigod amongst the legions of evil. Vecna, despite guaranteed immortality, was unsurprisingly not satisfied. He's devised a plan to ascend to the status of greater god by creating a mystical web over Earth that cuts off all of the gods from their followers. Following this, he intends to open the gates of time and bring forth his faithful legions from the past to allow him to ascend. The only problem facing him is the fact that he needs his iron hand to finally empower the mystical web and put his plan into action. Vecna has no idea where they are, as the gods hid them from his sight when they were sundered from his body during the titanic struggle with Kaz. Vecna is blind to their location and can only determine where they are by their effect on others, much like finding a boat by the wake it makes. Vecna is determined to succeed this time. Okay, the prologue is next up. The scenario takes the unusual decision of giving the famous Circle of 8 for the characters to play. Yes, the legendary wizards from Greyhawk, Otto, Tenser, Ottoluki, Rary, Bigby, Nistel, Dramige and the less well-known Jalazi Salvarian are given to the players to run. They've been sent by Mordenkainen to investigate a burial mound in the Cron Hills west of the city of Greyhawk. The mound is heavily shielded against magical perception and is covered in wards. Upon the circle investigating the mound, they are promptly ambushed by the occupant, a warrior called Halmadar who has attached a hand and eye to his body and thinks he is Vecna himself. As the circle are inside the mound, they cannot teleport out or otherwise escape due to the wards in place, and Halmadar quickly uses the hand's time stop ability to jump about the combat and kill the Circle of 8 using the hand's full touch power, death, no save. This is intended to leave the players in a state of shock. We're given a few options for the DM on how to treat this in the short and long term. No doubt most of these wizards had contingency spells in place to activate clones, wish them back to life, etc. But this is left for the DM to decide. It then jumps to Chapter 1. Here we have NPCs or even the player's own characters being associated with the Circle of Eight in some way, being afflicted with terrible visions of their demise, with a message, "Warn Mordenkainen," ringing in their ears. Players have a number of viable options for contacting Mordenkainen, the most obvious being via the College of Wizardry in the city of Greyhawk, but also the High Priest of Bokob is a good option. If they go via the College of Wizardry or Church of Bokob, they arrange a meeting with Kieran Jelusian or Ravel de Cinder, respectively. Kieran tells the players current events leading up to the circle being sent to the burial mound. Each of these people arrange to meet the players in an inn called the Rock and Oliphant at a later date. Chapter 2 takes the players to the Rock and Oliphant, where they meet either Kieran or Ravel. Whoever they meet pulls out a ring and an image of Mordenkainen appears. Mordenkainen is every bit the powerful mage he is portrayed as, and listens to the player's story. If the players are respectful towards him, he shares that he suspects that the hand and eye of Vecna are behind this. He also informs the players that there is divination blackout that is spreading far and wide, and suggests that various powers could be at work. It is at this point that the cult of Vecna attack the party, led by two horrific creatures, the hand of Vecna, a massive hulking creature with a hand instead of a head, and the eye of Vecna, a huge creature with a giant eye instead of a head. Chapter 3 is based around the research that the players must do. It gives multiple places to study, as well as a list of books that can be found and what they contain. It also details how the various temples of the area can assist. It gives details on tracking down the cultists that attacked them in the inn, and that leads them to the River Quarter, a place where the Reni, a river-dwelling tribe of gypsies, live. The players can gain various bits of information from the Reni, but also the cult becomes aware of their investigations. It also details other factions that can provide information, like the Thieves Guild and the Beggars Guild. All paths appear to lead to Verbabonk, an enormous settlement called Osnabralt. Chapter 4 is a short chapter detailing travelling to Verbabonk and gives information on the factions and people in charge there. Chapter 5 covers the journey to Verbabonk. The party are offered passage to Verbabonk by an old peg-legged Reni sailor called Turim Boronstack, who unknown to the party is actually an avatar of Vecna who uses the players to lead him to the hand and eye. In Verbabonk there is a strict pecking order which the players will need to understand, and the players can get information in Nürnberg on the location of Osnabralt. Verbabonk itself is a difficult place for evil cults to infiltrate due to the heavy presence of the cult of St. Cuthbert and the Knights of Verbabonk. The cult attempts to infiltrate the group at this point and lures the party to an old quarry where they are ambushed. It is at this stage that the players find out information that the cult has a shrine under the Scythe and Sheaf Tavern in Verbabonk. As the players ambush the cult, they are faced with cult members and Halmadar himself. As the players fight the cult, Turim unveils himself, takes the hand and eye, and advises the players to meet him at Tovag Baragu to claim their reward for aiding him. Chapter 6 gives details on Tovag Baragu, a stone circle of immense power that lies in the bright desert west of the Crystal Mist Mountains. The players have various methods of travelling there, and it is at this point that they start having heaven-sent visions directing them to the gnomish community of Osnabralt. Chapter 7 details the players' journey and arrival at Osnabralt. When the players arrive here, it is clear that the community are recovering from a recent attack. Roofs are blown off houses, windows are blown out, and the players are treated with caution by the gnomes. However, if they ingratiate themselves to them, they are told the legend of a strange man arriving here and plunging a sword into the ground. The players' earlier research should lead this to the conclusion that this is the Sword of Cass. Should the players be accepted amongst the gnomes, they must undergo a series of grueling tests to prove their worth before being led to the chamber where the sword is hidden, buried deep in the earth. As the players are discussing what to do, they hear a rumbling and the sword bursts forth. The gnomes, overjoyed that the sword will finally be gone from their possession, hold a feast in the players' honour, which they insist they attend. It is during this feast that the community is attacked by a priest of Ios and his Orog servants. Should the players spare the life of the priest, he offers an alliance in exchange for his freedom. The next stop for the players, armed with the Sword of Kaz, is Tovag Baragu. Chapter 8 details the players' journey to Tovag Baragu, and this continues into Chapter 9, which details their arrival. Tovag Baragu is surrounded by local tribesmen for about 3 miles out from the circle, who are all sitting silently waiting for something to happen. The players can make their way to the circle without hindrance, and when they arrive they see a lone figure in the centre, the avatar of Vecna, Turim Vorostak. Turim seems to be engrossed in a ritual. As the characters approach, they realise that the gateways show different places and different times. As the players get closer, Turim makes them an offer. Destroy your friends and I will make you a god. In the hopefully unlikely event that one of the players decides to do this, Vecna is good to his word and makes one of the players a minor demigod under the control of the DM, and the game ends here. Should one of the players decide at this point to attack Vecna, they are in for an unpleasant surprise. The Sword of Cass is useless against him. Vecna utterly destroys the first character to attack him with a wave of a hand. If they flat out refuse but don't attack him, a wise move. He cast them into one of the gateways with the words, "Since you refuse me, you can join Cass in eternal hell," and the players are flung into Vecna's prison, Citadel Cavitius. Chapter 10 details the player's arrival at Citadel Cavitius. The Citadel exists on a demi-plane which borders the negative quasi-plane of Ash. It appears as a colossal skull with the top sheared off, and it is Vecna's own private fortress and prison. The Citadel is contained within a force field that protects the occupants from the effects of the plane. Players are greeted by the doorkeeper, an old man dressed in monk robes who requests the players' names as they enter. If the players are smart, they can ask the doorkeeper if Cass is here, which the doorkeeper can help with. The Citadel is a hellish place. Enemies of Vecna call this place home, and most who die here continue to exist as undead in eternal torment. The players can meet various people driven mad by their imprisonment here, but with a degree of investigation can track down Kaz himself. Kaz is surrounded by a group of undead and sycophants who he holds court over, with Kaz now being a powerful vampire. The characters can try to convince Kaz to help them, and he only shows interest when Vecna is mentioned. Kaz's price is steep. He wants the sword of Kaz. If the players hand it over to him, he uses the sword's plane shift power immediately to leave the players stranded. His only concern is escaping the Citadel. The players will need to take precautions to prevent Kaz from abandoning them. Once the deal is struck, Kaz takes them back to Tovag Baragu and tells the players that it is this simple: they cannot defeat Vecna. The sword is useless against him, and that only one of equal power would stand a chance, and even then he would not be completely destroyed, just cast into the outer planes for a time. Chapter 11 details the return to Tovag Baragu, where Vecna's ritual is nearing completion. At this point they realise that Kaz and the sword are useless against Vecna, and they only have one place to turn for help: the gods themselves. If the priest of Ios is still with them, he urges them to pray to Ios for help. Should the players do this, or even just pray to the gods for help, paladins are instantly stripped of their powers, but Ios the Old answers. Ios appears and confronts Vecna, and a titanic battle ensues between the demigods. As they fight, the Bridge of Time is opening and Vecna's followers from the past start pouring through, which the players need to take care of. After taking care of those, the players are left with a huge problem: two evil demigods fighting. The best option that they have here is to somehow get them through one of the time portals, which is no easy task, but which banishes Vecna and Ios away from our Earth, for a time at least. Chapter 12 details what happens if the players win, as opposed to if Vecna lives. The players are rewarded in subtle ways by the powers of Greyhawk for their immense task. If Vecna wins, our Earth becomes a darker, grimmer place in need of adventurers. Appendix 1 details the main artefacts of the game: the Eye of Vecna, the Hand of Vecna, and the Sword of Kaz, as well as suggestions on how they can be destroyed permanently. Appendix 2 gives information on Vecna as a demigod, and also the statistics for his manifestation, as well as detailing the structure and duties of his priesthood. Following this, we have the game stats for the Eye and the Hand. Appendix 4 gives stats for the various NPCs that the players can meet throughout the adventure, including Kaz the Terrible. Appendix 5 gives stats for all of the members of the Circle of Eight and their henchmen that the players can play in lieu of their own characters. In conclusion, Vecna Lives is a mixed bag of good ideas and bad execution. The adventure is extremely linear in format, and the idea that the adventure is simply meant to kill off characters turned me off straight away. Should the inclusion of Vecna automatically mean that players must die? It seemed not really in the spirit of running a good game to me. The scenario describes itself as almost horror-like, but then does nothing to back this up. I admit that the Circle of Eight being killed off in seconds was one I enjoyed in theory, but in execution it seems unrealistic given their power level. I felt like a lot of details were left out for unknown reasons. For example, we are told that 7 magical items have been used to create a mystical web of energy that cuts off other gods from their followers, but that's where the idea stops. Why aren't the players trying to investigate this instead? Also, there is a huge flaw in the idea that divinations don't work. The Paladin Detect Evil ability still works perfectly well, which when I ran it made every attempt to infiltrate the party fail, as the Paladin picked them out instantly. The only exception to this was Vecna's avatar, Turin Vorostak, who has a non-detection effect at all times. For me, the problem was that AD&D at this stage was crying out for an adventure on an epic scale, something that had not been seen since Gary Gygax's GDQ 1-7 series. Greyhawk, for everything wonderful about it, had always seemed the most reserved of Dungeons & Dragons settings, and Vecna Lives was an attempt to break this stalemate that ultimately was good in thought but bad in practice. I imagine that if you had a party that followed the linear path of the adventure without asking too many questions, they would love it. But how many groups do that in practice? I run this adventure and my players enjoyed it, but I think that was more down to the work I put into making it work than what is presented here. It gladdens me that Vecna is firmly entrenched in the D&D multiverse as a god since 3rd edition, and this does more for his legacy than this adventure ever does, although I do admit that this adventure probably planted the seeds. This scenario at times goes for frankly laughable prices on the likes of eBay and Amazon, but it's really not worth it. It's far more style over substance and is for completists only. I give it a 4 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to check out my other reviews. Bud out.